There's a point in everyone's life where words are easy, but follow-through is rare. We say we're going to change, we say we're going to start, we say we're going to give it everything we've got. And for a while, we believe it. But then the emotion fades, the excitement wears off, and suddenly that commitment we made becomes negotiable. That's the moment that separates the talkers from the doers, the dreamers from the achievers, the ones who live by their promises and the ones who only wish they did. Commitment is not about convenience. It's not about doing something when it feels right or when the mood hits. It's about doing what you said you would do, long after the feeling in which you said it has passed. The people who build extraordinary lives, the ones who rise above average, are the ones who keep going even when it's uncomfortable, even when no one's watching, even when everything inside them wants to quit. You can't lead yourself to greatness if you keep breaking the promises you make to yourself. Every time you say you're going to do something and don't, you train your brain to accept mediocrity. You weaken your trust in yourself. And without that self-trust, you'll never reach the level of power, confidence, and certainty that's required to achieve real success. Think about it. How can you lead others? How can you inspire anyone if you can't even follow through on your own word? The real strength is built in those small moments when you keep going, when you get up early to work on your goals, when you stay disciplined instead of distracted, when you choose growth over comfort. Those moments, repeated day after day, shape your identity. They tell the world who you are. You don't need more motivation. You don't need another speech, another quote, another video to light a fire in you. What you need is to make a decision that says, I'm done negotiating with my excuses. You've got to decide that no matter what happens, no matter how tough it gets, no matter how many times you fall, you'll stay committed to the path you chose. You made a promise for a reason. That reason might have been buried under doubt, fear, or fatigue, but it's still there. You said you'd do it because something in you believed it was possible. Something in you wanted to grow, to break limits, to prove to yourself that you could become more than you are today. Don't let that voice die. Don't betray that belief. Every time you keep your word, your power expands. Every time you do what you said you would do, your confidence grows. Every time you refuse to give up, you rewrite the story of who you are. And suddenly, it's not just about the goal anymore, it's about becoming the kind of person who doesn't quit, who doesn't settle, who doesn't stop when it hurts. When you stay committed, life starts to respect you. Opportunities begin to appear. People begin to trust you. And most importantly, you begin to trust yourself. That's the foundation of unstoppable momentum, the kind that can take you from where you are right now to the life you've always imagined. So whatever it is you said you'd do, finish it, show up for it, push through it, stay loyal to your vision even when the world doubts you, because the greatest version of yourself is waiting on the other side of your consistency. And the only way to reach it is to stay committed to what you said you would do. Commitment means following through long after the excitement fades. It's about holding on when the initial spark of motivation disappears, when the energy drains, and when reality replaces enthusiasm. At the beginning of any goal, everything feels possible. You're inspired, fired up, ready to conquer anything, but that feeling doesn't last forever. The real test comes when the excitement is gone, when progress slows, when obstacles start to appear. That's when most people quit, because they mistake excitement for commitment. Excitement is temporary. Commitment is permanent. Excitement is emotional. Commitment is intentional. Anyone can start when it feels good, but only a few continue when it gets hard. That's the difference between people who succeed and those who stay stuck in cycles of starting and stopping. The ones who rise above are the ones who decide that their word means something, that their promise is non-negotiable, and that no matter how they feel, they will follow through. It's easy to keep going when things are smooth, when results show up quickly, and when people cheer you on. But what happens when no one is watching, when the results are invisible, when the effort feels endless. That's when true commitment begins. It's not about how loud your start is. It's about how strong your finish becomes. Real commitment doesn't live in motivation. It lives in discipline. It's waking up early when you'd rather sleep, putting in the work when no one notices, pushing through discomfort when your mind tells you to stop. That's the moment your character is forged. That's the moment you separate yourself from the rest. Because success doesn't reward the passionate starter. It rewards the relentless finisher. The person who keeps showing up even when the excitement is gone becomes unstoppable. They learn to rely on consistency instead of mood, on purpose instead of pleasure, on standards instead of feelings. When you act based on commitment, not emotion, you take control of your destiny. People often wait for motivation to strike before they act, but motivation is unreliable. It's like the weather, always changing, always shifting. Some days you feel unstoppable, other days you feel empty, but commitment isn't a feeling. It's a choice you make every single day. It's the voice inside you that says, I said I would, so I must. It's the inner contract between your present self and your future self. Every time you honor that contract, you move closer to the life you said you wanted, and every time you break it, you move further away. That's why the best never rely on how they feel, they rely on what they've decided. They've trained themselves to act beyond emotion, because emotion is short-lived, but commitment, real, deep, unwavering commitment, builds momentum that doesn't fade. It gives you strength on the days you have none, and clarity when everything feels uncertain. When you truly commit, you cut off all other options. You burn the bridges that lead back to comfort. You stop entertaining the idea of giving up because giving up no longer fits who you are. You stop negotiating with yourself. You don't ask, should I keep going? You just do. That's what separates those who create extraordinary results from those who talk about them. They've learned that commitment is not an event. It's a lifestyle. It's not something you turn on and off when convenient. It becomes part of who you are. It defines how you show up, how you think, how you live. Every time you push through fatigue, doubt, or fear, you're strengthening that muscle. You're proving to yourself that you can be trusted to follow through. That's how you build inner power, the kind that doesn't depend on praise, luck, or circumstance. The kind that lasts. There will always be a moment where quitting seems easier, where your mind whispers, it's not worth it. Or you can try again later. But those are lies designed to protect you from discomfort. The mind seeks comfort. Commitment seeks growth. Growth demands that you stay in the fire long enough to be shaped by it. You have to be willing to do what others won't, to keep going when the excitement is gone, when progress feels invisible, when no one claps for you. That's when your transformation is happening. Every repetition of discipline, every act of following through when you don't want to, rewires your mind for strength. You begin to trust yourself at a deeper level, and once you trust yourself, there's no limit to what you can achieve. Because the person who stays committed when others quit doesn't just win. They evolve into someone unstoppable, someone unshakable, someone who lives by their word even when no one else does. Every broken promise weakens self-trust. It's not just about letting yourself down in the moment. It's about what that moment communicates to your subconscious mind. When you say you're going to do something and don't follow through, you silently teach yourself that your words carry no weight. You build a pattern of doubt within your own identity. You stop believing in your own potential because deep down you've proven to yourself that you can't be trusted to keep your word. And the truth is, confidence doesn't come from success, it comes from self-trust. It comes from knowing that when you say you'll do something, you actually will. That simple act of alignment between your words and your actions creates an inner certainty that no one can take from you. When you break that alignment, you lose power. You start negotiating with yourself, making excuses, convincing yourself that it's okay to settle. Every time you do that, You chip away at your own foundation. The world often teaches us to keep our promises to others, to be reliable, to be dependable, to honor commitments we make externally. But what about the commitments we make to ourselves? Those are the ones that define who we become. When you say you're going to start that business, get in shape, change your habits, or build a new future, those promises are sacred. They are your personal contracts with your potential. And when you break them, it's not just about missing a goal, it's about damaging the most important relationship you'll ever have, the relationship with yourself. Self-trust is the root of confidence, and confidence is the root of all progress. Without it, no achievement feels real, because you'll always question whether you can maintain it. With it, you can walk through any uncertainty, because you know you'll show up for yourself no matter what. When you keep your promises, something powerful happens internally. Your brain starts to associate your word with truth. It starts to believe you again. That belief becomes momentum, and momentum becomes confidence. You start seeing yourself differently, not as someone trying, but as someone becoming. You begin to act with conviction instead of hesitation. You stop second, guessing your decisions because your identity starts shifting. You're no longer a person who hopes to change. You're a person who follows through. And that shift, that invisible transformation, is what separates those who achieve lasting success from those who never move beyond potential. Because success isn't built on massive action once in a while. It's built on the accumulation of small, consistent acts of self-respect. When you tell yourself you'll do something and follow through, it's like placing a brick in the foundation of your confidence. Each promise kept strengthens your inner structure. Each act of discipline adds stability. But when you break your promises, even small ones, you remove those bricks, leaving cracks in the foundation. Those cracks show up as doubt, procrastination, fear, and hesitation. You start to question yourself before you even begin. You lose the ability to trust your own word. And without that self-trust, every goal becomes harder because you're fighting against the voice inside you that says, you won't follow through anyway. That's why keeping your word isn't just about discipline, it's about identity. You are literally shaping the way you see yourself with every promise made and every promise kept. The people who build extraordinary lives aren't necessarily the smartest or most talented. They're the ones who have learned to keep their promises, especially when it's inconvenient. They've built a pattern of trust through repetition. They show up for themselves even when it's hard, even when it's boring, even when no one is watching. That pattern compounds over time. It turns ordinary effort into extraordinary consistency. It turns goals into habits and habits into identity. When you trust yourself at that level, you become unstoppable because no external setback can shake you. You know that no matter what happens, you'll find a way to get back up. It's easy to get caught in the trap of perfection, thinking you have to keep every promise perfectly, but that's not the goal. The goal is integrity. The goal is to align your daily behavior with your deeper values. Even when you fail, even when you fall short, you get back up and recommit. You show your mind that you don't give up on yourself. That single act of recommitment builds more trust than any perfect performance ever could. Because trust isn't about never falling, it's about proving you'll always rise again. Every time you honor your word, your internal voice becomes louder, stronger, and more certain. You start to move differently, speak differently, think differently. You no longer need validation because your confidence is self-sourced. You no longer need motivation because your integrity fuels you. That's when you become truly powerful. When you no longer have to convince yourself to act because you've trained yourself to trust your own direction. You become the kind of person who doesn't just dream but delivers, who doesn't just talk but executes, who doesn't just hope but becomes. And it all begins with one simple truth. Keep your word to yourself, because that's where all real strength begins. Growth happens in the moments you don't feel like showing up. It's easy to stay consistent when things are exciting, when the energy is high, when progress is visible. But the real transformation doesn't happen in those moments. It happens in silence, in struggle, in resistance. The moments that feel the hardest are the exact moments that shape you the most. When you push through the fatigue, when you do what you said you'd do despite the lack of motivation, that's when growth begins to take root, because growth is never comfortable. It's born in the friction between who you are and who you're becoming. Every time you act when it would be easier not to, you strengthen your character. Every time you keep going when no one else would, you expand your limits. The easy moments make you feel good, but the difficult moments make you great. Most people wait for the right mood, the right timing, or the right environment to take action. But the truth is, growth doesn't care about your mood. It demands effort when you least want to give it. It asks for sacrifice when comfort seems more inviting. The days when you don't feel like doing it are the days that matter the most, because that's when you're training the part of yourself that decides who you'll become. Every time you push past that internal resistance, you're not just completing a task, you're reprogramming your mind to operate beyond excuses. You're teaching yourself that discomfort isn't a signal to stop. It's a sign that you're entering new territory. And that's where all transformation begins. The body grows under resistance, and so does the mind. Without that resistance, there's no progress, no edge, no evolution. Think about the moments in your life when you've truly grown. They weren't the easy moments. They were the times you were tested, challenged, stretched to your limits. Growth hides inside struggle. It lives in repetition. It lives in the act of showing up even when it's boring, even when no one is clapping, even when progress feels invisible. Those small acts of discipline compound into something powerful. You may not see the results immediately, but something inside you shifts. You start to build grit. You start to build consistency. You start to build the muscle of doing what you said you would do. And one day, that quiet discipline becomes visible success. People will look at you and call it talent or luck, but deep down, you'll know it came from every moment you showed up when you didn't want to. The truth is, anyone can work hard when they feel inspired. But champions are built in the moments of resistance, not in the bursts of motivation. Champions are built when it's raining and cold and no one's around to notice their effort. They're built when everything inside them says stop, and they keep going anyway. They're built in the hours no one will ever see. Those unseen hours, those uncomfortable moments, are the foundation of mastery. Because real growth doesn't announce itself. It accumulates quietly, day after day, rep by rep, decision by decision. It's not glamorous, it's not exciting, but it's powerful. And once you realize that, you stop searching for motivation and start building habits. You stop chasing feelings and start trusting the process. You begin to understand that every time you choose effort over excuse, you're evolving into a stronger, more resilient version of yourself. The mind loves comfort, but comfort is the enemy of growth. Every time you choose comfort over challenge, you reinforce stagnation. You tell your subconscious that it's okay to stay the same. But when you choose challenge, when you choose to show up despite resistance, you expand your capacity. You stretch your limits. You prove to yourself that you can handle more than you thought. And over time, that self-proof becomes your greatest strength. Because once you know you can endure, you stop fearing difficulty. You stop avoiding pressure. You start seeking it because you understand that pressure creates growth. The diamond is formed under pressure. The athlete is forged in pain. The leader is built through adversity. You can't evolve in comfort. You have to grow through the grind. So when those moments come, the moments when you don't feel like showing up, when you'd rather take the easy way out, remember that those are the defining moments. Those are the moments that build your future self. Every time you show up regardless of how you feel, you're building discipline. Every time you stay committed despite fatigue, you're building resilience. Every time you do the work when no one's watching, you're building integrity. These invisible victories create visible results. Growth is not a moment of arrival. It's a continuous process of becoming. And every time you choose to show up, especially when you don't feel like it, you're proving to yourself that you're capable of more, that your limits are not fixed, and that your potential expands with every act of persistence. Decide once and eliminate negotiation with excuses. The moment you truly decide, everything changes. Most people never really decide. They prefer to keep their options open, to leave a door cracked for comfort, to give themselves an escape if things get hard. But that's not a decision. That's hesitation disguised as commitment. A real decision means cutting off every other possibility. It means there is no plan B, no backup, no going back. It means you've made up your mind that you will find a way no matter what. When you decide at that level, excuses lose their power. Doubt loses its voice. You stop wasting energy arguing with yourself about whether you feel like it today or not. The choice is already made. You no longer rely on feelings. You rely on a standard. You stop asking, "Can I?" and start declaring, "I will." That's the kind of decision that transforms lives because it eliminates the space where excuses live every time you hesitate, every time you leave room for negotiation. You give your mind an opening to quit. The human mind will always look for comfort, always search for the easy way out. It's built for survival, not growth. So if you leave any room for debate, it will find reasons to hold you back. It will whisper that you can start tomorrow, that you deserve a break, that it's okay to ease up just this once. But that's how mediocrity wins, one small excuse at a time. The people who achieve great things aren't necessarily smarter or more talented. They're just the ones who have stopped negotiating with themselves. They've decided that discipline is non-negotiable. They don't argue with their goals, they execute them. They've built a mindset that doesn't ask if, only how. And that mindset is what separates those who talk about success from those who live it. When you decide once, truly decide, your energy becomes focused. You stop scattering your attention across a dozen distractions. You stop wasting mental effort redeciding every single day. That's what most people do. They wake up and ask themselves, "Do I feel like it today?" They live in a constant loop of emotional decision making, which kills consistency. But when you decide once, you remove that loop. You make the decision one time, and from that point forward, your only task is execution. That's how you build momentum. That's how you turn effort into identity. You stop being someone who tries and start being someone who does. You stop being someone who hopes and start being someone who follows through. Every action you take after that reinforces the identity of a person who honors their word, who doesn't back down, who doesn't compromise with comfort. Excuses thrive in indecision. The more space you give them, the more convincing they become. You start believing your own stories about why it's not the right time, why you're too tired, why you'll do it later. But deep down, you know it's not about timing. It's about commitment. The moment you draw the line, the moment you say, "This is who I am now," everything shifts. You begin to see challenges differently. Obstacles no longer feel like reasons to stop. They become part of the process. You stop reacting emotionally to every setback and start responding strategically. You stop asking for the path to be easy and start asking for the strength to walk it. That's what real decision gives you. It gives you clarity, direction, and purpose. It replaces confusion with certainty. It silences doubt because the decision has already been made. There's freedom in commitment that most people never experience. They think freedom comes from keeping options open, but in truth, real freedom comes from focus. When you've made a real decision, your mind becomes quiet. You stop second guessing, stop hesitating, stop wasting energy on what-ifs. You channel everything into one direction, and that kind of focus creates power. You start to move faster, think clearer, act bolder. You stop living in emotional chaos and start living with purpose. The people who reach their highest potential aren't constantly changing direction. They're fully committed to one, and they refuse to let excuses pull them away. That level of decision creates consistency, and consistency creates transformation. Every breakthrough in life starts with a decision that leaves no room for negotiation. The moment you tell yourself, "I'll see how it goes," you've already lost momentum. But the moment you say, "I don't care how it feels, I'm doing it," you reclaim your power. You stop being controlled by emotion and start being driven by principle. That's how you turn goals into reality, by making a decision so firm that it becomes your identity. You stop trying to remember your reasons and start living them. You no longer have to push yourself forward because you've already crossed the line in your mind. The decision has been made, and now every action simply follows. That's what commitment looks like. That's what separates the ones who dream from the ones who deliver. Decide once, eliminate negotiation, and watch your life align with the strength of that single, unwavering choice. Your identity is built by what you repeatedly honor. Every choice you make, every action you take, every standard you uphold is shaping who you are becoming. You don't become confident by wishing for it. You become confident by repeatedly doing the things that build confidence. You don't become disciplined by thinking about it. You become disciplined by following through day after day. Identity isn't something you declare, it's something you demonstrate. It's built in the patterns of your behavior, in the promises you keep, in the standards you refuse to lower. Every time you honor your word, you reinforce an identity of strength. Every time you break it, you reinforce an identity of doubt. Who you are is not defined by what you say you want. It's defined by what you consistently do. The power of identity comes from alignment. When your actions match your intentions, when your habits match your goals, when your behavior matches your beliefs, most people underestimate how much their daily choices define their destiny. They think identity is something fixed, something they're born with. But identity is fluid, shaped moment by moment through repetition. Every time you show up, you're casting a vote for the kind of person you want to be. Every decision either strengthens or weakens the identity you're building. If you repeatedly choose excuses, you're shaping the identity of someone who settles. If you repeatedly choose effort, you're shaping the identity of someone who grows. It's not about perfection, it's about direction. The person you become is built through the consistency of what you honor most. The mind learns from patterns, and every pattern you repeat becomes a part of who you are. That's why it's so powerful to keep your commitments even when it's hard. You're not just finishing a task, you're proving to yourself who you are. The moment you start honoring your own word, everything shifts. You stop needing external validation because your strength comes from within. You no longer depend on motivation because your identity carries the weight. You start to act in alignment with the kind of person you believe yourself to be. And that belief becomes self-fulfilling. When your identity says, "I'm someone who follows through," your actions naturally match it. When your identity says, "I'm someone who gives up easily," your behavior reflects that too. That's why lasting change doesn't come from forcing new actions. It comes from shifting identity. You can't outperform the story you tell yourself about who you are. But when you begin to act differently, when you begin to honor your word consistently, that story starts to change. Slowly, your mind accepts a new truth. You are the kind of person who finishes what they start, who lives by their standards, who does what they said they would do. When you live by that standard, your environment starts to respond differently. People begin to trust you more because you radiate certainty. Opportunities start to find you because you've become someone who can be relied on. But the real reward isn't external, it's internal. It's the quiet power that comes from knowing that your word matters. That when you say you'll do something, you will. That your actions reflect your values, not your moods. That you don't bend under pressure because your identity won't allow it. That kind of integrity builds an unshakable foundation. You stop chasing motivation because your identity itself drives you. You stop waiting for inspiration because your habits have taken over. You become the kind of person who doesn't need to talk about what they're going to do, the kind of person who simply does it. The truth is, consistency is identity. Every time you repeat an action, you're reminding yourself who you are. You either build strength or weakness, confidence or doubt, power or passivity. The identity you live with today is the result of what you've honored most in the past. If you've honored procrastination, then that's who you've become. If you've honored excuses, that's the identity you've built. But the moment you start honoring commitment, everything changes. The moment you stop negotiating with your standards and start living by them, you begin to rebuild your sense of self. You start to walk differently, think differently, speak differently. You begin to trust yourself again, and that trust is the foundation of transformation. Once you trust yourself deeply, you stop fearing failure because you know you'll always get back up. You stop doubting your potential because you've seen your own consistency in action. Your identity is the reflection of what you practice most. So ask yourself, what are you honoring every day? Are you honoring comfort or growth, fear or courage, excuses or execution? Whatever you repeat becomes who you are. You don't rise to your goals. You fall to your standards. The key to becoming who you're meant to be is to hold yourself to a level of consistency that commands respect from within. When you live in alignment with your word, when your behavior matches your beliefs, when your actions reflect your intentions, you create a powerful identity. And once that identity is solid, you no longer have to fight for commitment. It becomes automatic. You don't have to chase success. It starts to follow you. Because success is not something you pursue. It's something you attract by the person you become through what you consistently honor.